Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us today on the webinar series Global Roundtable on Climate Action in Tourism, Supporting Climate Resilient Tourism Development. We are very delighted to have you today with us, and we will have very fruitful discussions and presentations. So without any further ado, I would like to start with you the content that we will go through today. So soon we will have some opening remarks from UN Tourism, from United Nations Environment Program, and colleagues from Brazil. And later on, we will have a presentation from Costa Rica Climate Action Plan for Tourism. Later on, we will follow with a report release. And then the session will be followed by a panel discussion. And we have a very interesting lineup of speakers. And at the end of this session, there will be some time dedicated to you to share your questions and with us. Just before we start, I would like to bring to your attention some housekeeping rules to ensure this smooth and fruitful session. So please ensure that you are mute when you are not speaking. We also invite and encourage you to adjust your name in Zoom. So you can by right-click, rename yourself at your name and the name of your organization. So we would know that who is with us and who is also talking. And during the Q&A question, and also during the whole session, if you have some question, please feel free to post it in chat. And please kindly be informed that the session is being recorded. And if you have any considerations, please let us know. So without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to our Executive Director, Ms. Zorica Orozovic, to share with us her opening remarks. Dear Zorica, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Roxana. Thank you for the team for putting together this workshop. Dear colleagues, partners, and friends, it's really good to see you and to welcome you to the Global Roundtable on Climate Action in Tourism. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Brazil and Azerbaijan for collaborating with us to organize this important discussion. I also wish to thank UNEP for the invaluable support. Today, as we mark the UN Global Tourism Resilience Day, we are reminded of the urgency and importance of our shared mission. Tourism is not only vulnerable to climate change, it must also be a force for climate action. At COP29, we reached an historic milestone. For the first time, tourism was officially included in the action agenda. This recognition is a testament to the growing understanding of our sector's role in the global response to climate change. Through the discussion in Baku, one message resonated across all intervention. Resilience must be at the heart of tourism transformation. More than half of nationally determined contributions already acknowledge tourism as a vulnerable sector. After COP29, we now see a stronger collective recognition that tourism is also part of the solution. This means two things. First, that we must actively work to build resilience for tourism businesses, of course, but most importantly, for the communities and destinations that depend on tourism. Second, that we must lead the transition with a science-based low-carbon business model and more sustainable behaviors, embracing innovation and collaborative solutions. The good news is that we have strengthened framework for action. On the one hand, we have the COP29 Baku Declaration on enhanced climate action in tourism, which consolidates unprecedented high-level political commitment. We very much appreciate the efforts of COP29 presidency and State Tourism Agency of Azerbaijan, which made the declaration a reality. And on the other hand, we have the Glasgow Declaration Initiative, foundation of the Baku Declaration, implemented under the One Planet Sustainable Tourism Program, and which is the tool for action and has already catalyzed the development of more than 380 climate action plans by tourism stakeholders. We must leverage on this strengthened framework to advance faster. It must serve the destination that tourism operates in, the businesses that sustain local economies, and the trillion of livelihoods that tourism supports worldwide. Because we need a people-centered transformation. This Global Roundtable is an opportunity to take the next steps. Resilience is a complex concept. It's about adaptation, mitigation, and transformation. It is about ensuring that tourism not only survives climate change, but helps lead the way towards a sustainable future. Let us use this moment to exchange ideas, share solutions, and pave the way to COP30 in Belém, Brazil. The momentum is here. It's time to act now.
Thank you very much, dear Zorica, for your inspiring and supportive words. It's very valuable for us and the sector that we really have your direct support. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Jorge Laguna Celis. He's the head of One Planet Secretariat from the United Nations Environment Program. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Roxana, and it's a pleasure to just come right after Zorica and to continue this celebration that we have had since early in the morning today, to not only celebrate but exchange views on, in the context of these global roundtables on climate action in tourism, what is our role of each and every one of us in supporting climate resilient tourism development. It is really, as it has already been echoed by Zorica, the Executive Director of UN Tourism, an absolute pleasure to join you today as a partner in the Global Tourism Resilience Day. I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to UN Tourism, the Republic of Azerbaijan, and Brazil for co-organizing and leading this important discussion, and also for the continued leadership in advancing climate action in the tourism sector. UNEP as an organization and the Secretariat of the One Planet Network, which is serviced by UNEP and provided by the United Nations Environment Program, was honored to be a partner and supporter of the first ever Tourism Day at COP29, an initiative led by the Azerbaijani presidents of COP29 and UN Tourism. It is in this regard that I would like to express my deep gratitude to all member states and tourism sector stakeholders that are with us today for their exceptional support and for joining us in the COP29 Declaration on Enhanced Climate Action in Tourism. Dear colleagues, as Zorica Urošević just mentioned, every action matters. The urgency to increase ambition and action has never been greater. Every action matters in the fight against climate change, and we know that tourism plays both a crucial role in addressing climate change and in bringing the solutions through circular economy models. We know that the role of tourism in climate action is now widely recognized thanks to our joint efforts. Over 53% of national determined contributions make a reference to the sector. And what's interesting is about those 53%, or roughly a little bit more than half of the climate promises, is that 2/3 focus on adaptation measures, while 1/3 includes mitigation measures. Why? According to the latest research led by the Universities of Sydney, Queensland, Griffith, and Linnaeus, we know that tourism-related greenhouse gas emissions in 2019, which is one of our latest estimates, accounted for over 8.8% of global emissions. So therefore, tourism, it is a high-impact sector, but also a sector of solutions. We know that although transportation alone contributes to over 70% of the tourism's global emissions, which are primarily emerging from air and road travel, accommodation still accounts for over 21% due to the energy used for heating, cooling, lighting, appliance, and water consumption. So without action by the sector, we know that the CO2 emissions, if they remain unchecked, they will continue to grow, both at the level of operations and also at the level of transportations. Some estimates indicate that they can grow over 25% by 2030 as the sector recovers. So beyond the direct emissions, we also have a number of knock-off effects that the tourism sector brings and that we want to shine a positive light towards them. Let's look at plastic consumption, which is not only generating pollution and damaging the attractiveness of the destinations that we all enjoy, but it's also responsible then again for around 3.4%, according to estimates for the global greenhouse gas emissions that have already been accounted for. Tourism, vast value chains also have important effects on nature, on communities that support the tourism operations. They span transport, energy, agriculture, construction, and waste management. So how can we use also the incredible potential that tourism destinations and operations can have in promoting more circular economy approaches? We know that advancing sustainability in tourism strengthens resilience, resource efficiency, and climate action across these interconnected industries. So, in conclusion, addressing this issue in the context of the dialogues that we are holding today is an opportunity to advance, discuss, and make a tangible impact. For example, I invite us today to discuss how can governments and national tourism authorities can take decisive actions in integrating tourism more effectively into national and local climate strategies. And I look forward to hearing regional and national experiences in this regard. We also can exchange views today on how can we strengthen interministerial and cross-sectoral coordination in tourism policies, which we know is essential to address climate change comprehensively. I would also invite you to share with us how can we bring a perspective in which tourism ministries can also join forces with other ministries, for example, in employment sectors to enhance the skills, the capacities that youth needs. And finally, let us discuss how we can use the Glasgow Declaration and the Baku Tourism Day as a successful foundation that would help us move from Baku to a successful COP in Belém. We know that the objective of the Brazilian presidency is to show a COP of action and implementation. And I am confident that we have all the resources, all the actors, and the activities to make sustainable tourism a big win for climate in the next COP30 in Brazil. I am convinced that tourism businesses have a responsibility and are setting ambitious net zero targets aligned with the Paris agreements, and that together with the support of the United Nations system and academia, we are reinforcing a science-based approach. So in essence, I would like to express not only appreciation to the political leadership that's provided by Azerbaijani presidents, UN Tourism, and the government of Brazil in driving the Baku Declaration on enhanced climate action and ensuring that this is well represented in Brazil's COP, but also to pledge to bring the tourism sector along through the One Planet Network Sustainable Tourism Program to collectively support all the relevant actors in achieving net zero emissions by 2050, or we hope sooner. The decisions and actions that we discussed today will define the sector's ability to thrive in a climate resilient future. In concluding, I want to thank you all and wish you all an excellent dialogue today.
Dear Jorge, thank you very much. Very well said and very insightful remarks on behalf of UNEP. That's really great to have you on board with us. Now I would like to give the floor to the Ministry of Tourism of Brazil, pave the way to COP30. We have with us Mr. Caio Martinez Franco, Chief of Staff of Vice Minister's Office. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I want to congratulate the Azerbaijan government for such an amazing event in COP29. We participated with many members from our government and many ministries of Brazil. And we are so glad to participate, and we hope that all the discussions that we had in that event can progress, and we have the commitment to host the event here in Brazil and to continue all the advances and the discussions that are so important for the environment and for the future of the world. Brazil is really happy. We are really happy to host the COP30 here. It will be an event that will happen in the forest. So as President Lula always says, is the COP of the forest. And we really hope to have all of you here and to bring such a good experience for people that are visiting Brazil for the event. And we hope that the tourism will have the importance recognized that it has for the climate change combat. And I want to bring here three important points about this that, I'm sorry, just that. So I have 3 points here that I want to bring to this discussion that I think it's important. The first one is that we are working so hard to have a thematic day on tourism again, just as we had on COP29 in Baku, because we believe that it's really important to bring this recognition to the importance of tourism. And we already sent a letter with the support of UN Tourism to the COP30 presidency, and we had good expectations that this request will be attended. So we are really expecting it because we have such a good agenda to bring to the COP30 event, and we can't stay out of this again because it was really remarkable what happened in COP29. The second point is about our interministerial committee on climate change. It's a national committee, but I think that's important to share with you that we also sent a letter to our presidency because we want to join this committee and bring the tourism to the center of the government discussion about climate change. So we also have good expectations that they will attend this request, and it will be really soon. I think that next month already we will formally integrate this committee. And this committee is responsible for the national climate change strategy. That is a strategy that we are building as a result of the Paris Agreement of 2016 from the COP26. So it's a continuation of the effort that we are doing since this agreement. And this national strategy, how can it contemplates a national climate change plan. This plan will guide our actions for 10 years. So it's from 2025 for 2035. So it's a 10 years actions that we're planning in this climate plan. So it's being built by multiple hands. We have like experts, we have the government, different sectors of the government. We also have the participation of the community. So it has social participation effectively. And we really hope that this plan will be, we have a tourism sector plan inside this national plan. So it's really important because we'll bring the tourism discussions and the tourism plans and the tourism actions to this national plan, national strategy. So it's really important for us, and really hope that in June of 2025, we can have this finished and shared with everybody. So it's headed by the Brazilian Ministry of Environment and Climate Change and the Brazilian presidency, but we, as Ministry of Tourism, we want to bring this discussion together and participate actively from this national strategy plan. So can I share some my screen, because I want to share with you how we are working with the COP30 preparations. Just one minute.
Yeah, sure. You can use the share screen. You have the access.
I will try to be really quickly because I don't want to extend so much. I want to really quickly just show you, are you seeing my screen, just to confirm?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I just want to show you really quickly how we are planning to work with the COP30 preparations, because the Ministry of Tourism is not, we are not legally responsible for the COP30 organization, but we really are improving so many efforts to be sure that the event will be well prepared and that we can receive all the visitors that are expected to be here. Now we have more thousands and thousands of visitors waited here. So we want to bring the best Brazilian experience for all of them, aside of all the important discussions that we need to have about the climate change, of course, but we can't forget that we are receiving visitors and we need to have they need to have a good Brazilian experience here. So we made an action plan with all the different sectors of the Ministry of Tourism to organize and manage all the actions that we want to bring to prepare ourselves and the destinations and the discussions that we want to have about the tourism in COP30. So we have it organized in 7 different strategic axes. It's the first one is sustainability and responsibility in tourism. The second one is training and capacity building of service tourism service providers. We have the X, that's tourism products and experience. Promotion, of course, formalization and inspection, infrastructure and innovation, and the institutional action. That some of these points that I told you before, they are our institutional action. So the training and capacity building for tourism service providers, we want to prepare the tourism sector, to receive the high-level delegations and the high-level authorities that are coming here, and also all the other visitors. But we need them to be well prepared to receive these people, because we know that there is some expectations and there is some standards that we need to accomplish to hold an event of this importance. The formalization and inspection of tourism sector providers is about, we want to stimulate the sector to be more to be legally and structured, not have some informalities. So we want to increase the formality of our providers to be sure that the event will be more safe for everybody, that people can trust our providers in our sector. The tourism products and experience is because we want to ensure that the tourism service providers and the public and private sector managers, they are well prepared to receive the visitors, and that we are providing experiences and products that are linked to the COP30 ideas and the COP30 themes, because we want to bring the ecotourism experiences for everybody that is coming. We want to have a legacy of sustainable and responsible products and experiences for everybody. We can't just have an event here and don't bring this legacy for Brazil, of course. And the sustainability and responsibility in tourism, we have a lot of actions to prepare the sector and to remain this legacy after. So we have a lot of actions to minimize the damages, the environment damage from the event, of course, and also to be more well prepared to receive you with these actions implemented. So the infrastructure and innovation is we are just accompanying, and we want to be sure that the city will be well prepared to receive you. The tourism product promotion is just about the promotion of Brazil, of course, that we'll do with Embratur, that's our international promotional agency. And just to end it is the institutional action. That's about all the preparations that we need to do here inside the ministry, of course, and to bring the demands that our partners, international organizations, national organizations that work with the environment and climate change. So that being said, sorry if I took much time, but I just want to bring you this, how we are acting and how we are planning to to work to prepare ourselves to COP30. And that being said, I just want you to stay with some remarks from our Vice Minister that sent us a video because she can't come here today for our reasons. And
Do you mind stop sharing the screen so I can play the video, please? Thank you.
And before I end it, I just want to present Camila and João. They are from our international advisory here in the Ministry of Tourism. They also know many of you that are participating here. So thank you. And I will now, I give the word to my Vice Minister, Ana Carla. Thank you.
Bom dia, buenos dias, good morning, everyone. É uma honra estar aqui neste diálogo para aprimoramento de ações rumo à COP30. O Brasil se prepara para receber o mundo este ano na minha querida terra, na porta da Amazônia, cidade de Belém do Pará, que alguns já conhecem. Conhecemos sim que o turismo é crucial, não apenas para o crescimento da economia, para a inclusão social, mas especialmente para a prevenção e combate dos efeitos das mudanças climáticas, que têm sido cada vez mais frequentes. O governo do presidente Lula e aqui o Ministério do Turismo, liderado pelo ministro Celso Sabino, também reconhece essa importância do diálogo, mas não só do diálogo, também promovendo o exemplo de um turismo sustentável, aprimorando a regionalização, empoderando nós, mulheres, respeitando a cultura, a diversidade de cada local e, claro, fortalecendo a governança para garantir um turismo mais resiliente, mais responsável, mais inclusivo e solidário. Acreditamos que esse setor potente pode e deve ser um ator fundamental para alcançar os objetivos da UNFCCC e o Acordo de Paris, que mais do que nunca precisa ser fortalecido. Ao priorizar o turismo de baixo carbono, proteger os ecossistemas e promover a resiliência econômica, o Brasil demonstra que o turismo sustentável não é apenas uma aspiração, mas sim uma necessidade urgente. Já temos excelentes exemplos que seguem essa direção. Eu vou citar um exemplo lá do meu estado, do Pará, o estado que vai receber a COP30. Tem um peixe nativo lá na Amazônia que é muito famoso na região norte. O nome dele é pirarucu. É um dos maiores peixes de água doce do mundo, pode ultrapassar mais de 3 metros e pesar em torno de 200 quilos. Foi através do manejo sustentável desenvolvido pelos povos indígenas, a população local, organizações de base comunitária, organizações governamentais e também de cooperação internacional, que o pirarucu se tornou muito abundante nos rios e lagos da Amazônia, gerando renda para inúmeras famílias da região, tanto que hoje é apelidado de gigante da Amazônia. Esse manejo sustentável que eu estou contando para vocês, do pirarucu, salvou a espécie, que estava à beira da extinção, mudando a realidade socioeconômica dessas comunidades, além, claro, da biodiversidade de toda a região, atraindo turistas pela gastronomia ou também pelo turismo de pesca, entre outros tipos de turismo também. Então isso é uma prova de que com planejamento, empenho coletivo, é possível gerar renda, fortalecer a comunidade local e ao mesmo tempo preservar a biodiversidade. E o melhor de tudo isso é que com uma boa ação, gera outras boas ações, outros bons resultados. A proteção do território para o manejo do pirarucu, por exemplo, fez com que outras espécies de peixes também voltassem a crescer na região, criando nas comunidades essa conscientização de cuidado com o meio ambiente, utilizando seus recursos de forma correta e sustentável, não faltarão recursos e matéria-prima no futuro. E nem desenvolvimento, claro. Senhoras e senhores, o governo brasileiro está muito empenhado e posso assegurar que a Conferência das Nações Unidas, a COP30, será um marco significativo para a comunidade internacional, em especial para o Brasil. Afinal, como diz o nosso presidente Lula, nós vamos discutir a importância da Amazônia dentro da Amazônia. Nós vamos discutir a questão indígena vendo os indígenas. Nós vamos discutir a questão dos povos ribeirinhos, vendo os povos ribeirinhos e vendo como eles vivem. Eu tenho certeza que o Brasil mostrará ao mundo seus esforços em áreas como energias renováveis, biocombustíveis, turismo, claro, a agricultura de baixo carbono Enfim, além de reforçar sua atuação histórica em processos multilaterais, como foi na época 92 e na Rio+20. Também mostraremos a enorme biodiversidade de oferta turística que temos de norte a sul do nosso país e como todas as regiões estão se beneficiando de oportunidades pelo turismo. Além disso, temos trabalhado fortemente na regionalização do turismo, diversificando nossa oferta, promovendo o desenvolvimento sustentável em áreas menos conhecidas e garantindo que todas as comunidades possam prosperar em um futuro resiliente no clima. Temos que estimular a descarbonização no setor. Isso realmente a gente tem que correr atrás e incentivando a adoção de uma infraestrutura turística de baixo carbono, desde hotéis sustentáveis até um transporte neutro em carbono. Por meio do investimento em energia renovável e acomodações ecológicas, pretendemos reduzir a pegada de carbono do setor. O Brasil entende que a sustentabilidade deve andar lado a lado com o desenvolvimento econômico. Por isso, estamos impulsionando oportunidades que apoiem a conservação e o uso sustentável da biodiversidade e dos recursos naturais, reduzindo as desigualdades e contribuindo para a erradicação da pobreza e da fome. O turismo sustentável também possui a capacidade única de estimular a responsabilidade e a conservação ambiental, ao mesmo tempo que promove a cultura local, melhora a qualidade de vida, empodera economicamente mulheres, jovens, povos indígenas e povos locais. Mas tudo isso não será possível sem a participação ativa das comunidades locais. Por isso entendemos e estamos fortalecendo os modelos de governança participativa para garantir que as comunidades tenham voz na formação, no desenvolvimento e na preservação do setor do turismo. Senhoras e senhores, o Brasil está abrindo caminho para um turismo mais sustentável, que gere renda e equidade de gênero e salarial também. Resiliência também é importante e a inclusão não pode faltar. Então a COP30 ela representa uma oportunidade para mostrar para todo mundo o nosso progresso, inspirarmos ações globais, claro, e reafirmarmos nossa dedicação ao futuro resiliente no clima. Acreditamos que o turismo é um dos maiores setores econômicos do mundo. Sim, responsável por milhões de empregos, que contribui significativamente para o PIB nacional, porém também é altamente vulnerável às mudanças climáticas, com o aumento das temperaturas, eventos climáticos extremos, a perda da biodiversidade representando cada vez mais uma ameaça. Enfim, nossa vasta riqueza natural da floresta amazônica requer uma gestão proativa e sustentável para ser preservada não só para a gente, mas também para as futuras gerações. Por isso, como signatário do Acordo de Paris, o Brasil está comprometido em garantir que o setor do turismo esteja alinhado com nossas contribuições nacionalmente determinadas, as NDCs. Nosso objetivo é claro: tornar o turismo parte da solução, reduzindo as emissões, promovendo a resiliência e implementando soluções baseadas na natureza. Convidamos o mundo a se juntar a nós e também nós nos juntamos ao mundo nesta jornada para experimentar as belezas naturais do Brasil, testemunhar nosso compromisso com a sustentabilidade e trabalhar juntos para tornar o turismo um pilar da ação climática global. Contem com o Ministério do Turismo. Muito obrigada. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues from the Ministry of Tourism of Brazil. This is really an honor to have your full support and have the direct message from the Vice Minister. Now I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Ms. Virginia Fernandez-Trapa. She is the Program Coordinator at Sustainable Tourism and Resilience Department at UN Tourism. Dear Virginia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Roxana, for giving me the floor. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Madrid. It's really great to be numerous. We appreciate your interest in this important topic and your willingness to contribute. I would like to join Roxana in thanking our Executive Director, Zorica Urošević, Jorge Laguna Celis from UNEP, and also Her Excellency the Vice Minister Lopez and Caio Franco from the Ministry of Tourism of Brazil for their leadership to drive climate action in tourism forward. We have heard it in the opening remarks. We are now looking at a strengthened framework for climate action in tourism. Can we get the slide up, please? And we really need to work together to put this strengthened framework to good use. We have the COP29 declaration on enhanced climate action in tourism, consolidating the high-level political commitment, with 62 governments having endorsed it and more to come. We also have the Glasgow Declaration initiative to which many of you are signatories already, which is the tool for implementation and has already catalyzed almost 400 climate action plans from tourism stakeholders. Next, please. So we need to put this framework to good use, and we hope we can do that for climate resilient tourism development. But and today is Global Tourism Resilience Day, but what do we mean by climate resilient development? There are obviously different interpretations of it depending on where you are, but actually we have a good definition in front of us on the screen from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And the IPCC has defined climate resilient development as a solutions framework that successfully combines strategies to deal with climate risks, so adaptation, with actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, so mitigation, and most importantly, which result in improvements for both nature and people's well-being. So we are looking at reducing exposure and vulnerability. We're looking at conserving biodiversity, but we're also looking at cutting down emissions. And most importantly, we have to navigate the interactions across them. We need a holistic lens. We need to know our context, because adaptation measures can lead to mitigation-related benefits. For example, think of mangrove restoration and the carbon capture that it can lead to, or water efficiency measures. Think that mitigation actions can also lead to adaptation-related benefits, like, for example, renewable energy or circular management of waste that reduce the dependency on fossil fuels and landfill-related pollution. So I guess today one of our objectives with this dialogue is to try and unpack this concept of climate resilience for tourism. And for that, can we get the poll up? We wanted to gather your views before we start on which of the elements that you see on the screen are the three most important. You have to scroll down. There's like 10 elements that we had pre-identified, and make sure you just tick 3, otherwise it's considered cheating. So the tool is a bit rudimentary, and we couldn't really set it up for just ticking 3. So what do you think? Do you think it's undertaking risk assessments that is the priority, supporting local communities in extreme weather, developing flexible operations and itineraries? Is it increasing our renewable energy supply or increasing resource efficiency? Is it develop circular business models? Is it implementing nature-based solutions or strengthening local supply chains? Do we need to improve visitor awareness? And what about ensuring adaptation-related funding? Make sure you check your 3 top picks. We'll give you maybe 5 seconds more. 4. How many have answered? 52 only. Okay, we'll give you maybe 10 more seconds. It's not an exam, it's just sharing opinions, so we see how we are advancing in our understanding. And it could have been nice to have an other button, but we will have to upgrade our tools for that. Maybe for the next webinar, we can be a bit more flexible. Okay, I think we're reaching almost to 100 participants. So what about we close the poll, Roxana, now and see what it looks like? Okay, so we see that many of you consider important nature-based solutions, circular business models, and those are followed by supporting communities, increasing renewable energy supply, and many others. So thanks for those first insights. At least I hope we have activated your brains, and I propose that we keep those elements in mind when listening to our amazing speakers. We have really an amazing lineup, and we hope to cater for questions and answer sessions at the end, but don't hesitate to keep the chat lively throughout the event on a constructive tone, please. And now, after this framing, I really wish to give the floor to our colleague Mariana Garita. She's the head of certifications and social responsibility in tourism from the Costa Rican Tourism Board. So she can share with us how Costa Rica's ITC developed the climate action plan for tourism. Mariana, the floor is yours.
Good evening and good morning, Virginia and esteemed colleagues and friends. I would like to share my screen. to start the presentation. Is it showing us?
Yes, we can see that. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to share with you this afternoon and morning during the Global Tourism Resilience Day to reflect on tourism as a sector that has demonstrated its transformative power to recover from many crises and that enhances the well-being of local communities and fosters positive changes for conservation of the environment. We are all familiar with a pressing issue at hand, the climate emergency, and I would like to reflect briefly on how Glasgow Declaration Action Plan contributes to Costa Rica's environmental commitments on tourism. We believe that the Glasgow Declaration is a call for national tourism organizations and businesses in general to act quickly on climate change. Its goals are ambitious, clearly, but necessary. Costa Rica has been working hard on this for decades to achieve a decarbonized economy at a national level, and our commitment to sustainability goes beyond the realm of tourism. Our policies and national tourism plan is based on sustainability as a pillar of our tourism development model. However, the Glasgow Declaration Initiative provided a framework, tools, and guidance to integrate several ongoing efforts, update actions, and to add new initiatives into an actionable plan for tourism that aligned united the stakeholders' perspectives and defined also specific key areas to continue working on. So we became signatories on January 2024. Later on, we started to develop the action plan and submitted a progress report last year on September 2024. And the construction of the action plan was considering our possibilities from an institutional perspective, but also from different sectors, taking into account the guides that are already available. Also, the acknowledgement of the plan and commitment at a ministry level, the board of directors and managers are essential for achieving the effective implementation of this plan. This way, we are leading a successful coordination within the Costa Rica Tourism Institute and between governmental institutions, nonprofit organizations, agencies, and the private sector. Therefore, the Costa Rica Tourism Institute is aiming to contribute to the global goal of keeping the temperature increase below 1.5 Celsius degree based on the pre-industrial levels. We are aiming to contribute to the country's goal of achieving a decarbonized economy by 2050, strengthening the country-level alliances related to climate action, and maintaining international cooperation efforts on climate change. And how? Well, we are addressing 26 actions among 8 key areas or pathways on a time frame from 2024 to 2030. We have defined key roles, persons in charge to execute these actions, indicators, and also the stakeholders. I would like to share a few examples of these actions today. In terms of adaptation, for example, the criteria have been updated in the Certification for Sustainable Tourism, a program that we have to certified companies transforming their business models into more sustainable ones, and also in other programs that aimed at hotel investment to promote climate resilience and protection by using green building designs for all new constructions and refurbishments, for example. Also, in collaboration with the GIZ and insurance stakeholders, we are developing a tool for hotels to facilitate the application of ecosystem-based adaptation methods to protect tourism destinations from climate hazards and to ensure its business continuity. On the other hand, in in the key area of collaboration, we have negotiated a special carbon rate per ton to encourage compensation of tourist companies, but also of general tourists. This special compensation rate established or has been established for the businesses and between an alliance with the Costa Rica Tourism Institute and the National Forestry Financing Fund. In terms of education, our marketing team is committed to promote the less visited parks or areas that are our hidden treasures and the new attractions to lower the pressure on most popular areas. Also, in terms of measure, which is quite relevant, we encourage, enable, and support all businesses and destinations to measure and disclose the emissions through the Certification for Sustainable Tourism program, the One Planet guidelines also, and a carbon footprint calculator that we promote in the tourism sector. Let's move to another key areas, such as mitigation. For example, we promote a sustainable local procurement model, supporting sustainable agropecuary farmers throughout the implementation of a program named Tu Modelo, which means tourism for local development engine. It's a program related to the certification of sustainable tourism, but it seeks to unite the demand of local sourcing products with the offer also in same regions. So we facilitate and put together the buyers as hotels and restaurants and the farmers in local regions so that they can build sustainable businesses. Also, we tackle plastic pollution through a circular approach based on the action plan for plastics in tourism that we have been signatories as well. In terms of policy and plans, we promote diversified tourist attractions and products as alternatives to increase dispersion of tourists across the country and reduce the impact in vulnerable destinations and attractions. As I mentioned before, this is important, an important task in joint with our marketing teams. And also, we seek to maintain the carbon neutral recognition for the Costa Rica Tourism Institute. We have an institutional policy and goals and targets set so that we can also be an example for companies in Costa Rica and for tourism sector. We need also to set the example and also bring more companies into these mission. So being a carbon neutral institution for almost 5 or 6 years now has allowed us to commit beyond just the actions that we promote along the tourism sector. In terms of regeneration and finance, alongside with the National Forestry Financing Fund, these calculator I've been mentioning the online calculator to measure the carbon footprint of anyone's travels is being used by companies so that they can provide it to customers and to quantify and purchase the offsets carbon emissions easily. The most relevant point here is that the money goes directly to this official mechanism to restore tropical ecosystems. So we're having a special rate in the price per ton for carbon certified companies, and also encouraging and reinforcing the country's calling for companies and travelers that are interested in more sustainable experiences. On the other hand, this commitment as signatories of the Glasgow Declaration involves the raising awareness to advancing climate action. So we are willing to work in a collaborative spirit, sharing good practices and solutions, and disseminating information to encourage additional organizations to become signatories and supporting one another to reach targets. For example, we see here some of the participation of our teams during the climate action consultation meeting in 2023, and also during the Latin America Invest Verde event during 2024. I appreciate all the efforts done by Andrea da Cruz, my colleague, because she has been also encouraging tourism companies to raise awareness during several events, training events for leading companies in sustainability. For example, we see here some pictures. We've done it in alliance with Zero Waste Costa Rica and other organizations like Eco Héroes or Eco Heroes, to improve waste management and to promote circularity as well. So we visit companies and along with our partners, they really, in these pictures, we can see that they actually did an audit on the waste baskets that they had at the hotel, so that they can make more conscious and awareness about how important it is to make a good waste management. It starts there. Everything starts there. On the other hand, joint efforts with the Ministry of Environment are fundamental to accelerate climate action. So we're very glad to have their support in these symbiotic relations that we have. And we're very glad of Costa Rica's Minister of Environment participation during the first ministerial meeting and on improving climate action in tourism during COP29, and also for the adherence to the Baku Declaration as well. It's important to recall some of the opportunities for our country, being signatories of the Glasgow Declaration and building this plan. As I mentioned, strategic alliances and collaborations have been fostered with local and international organizations. The impact is bigger when we join efforts, as well as the exchange of knowledge and experiences with other destinations. And we have an advantage here that recently, during 2024, the Costa Rica Tourism Institute did internal restructuring to reinforce sustainability, as from my perspective, to reinforce different purposes, but also the sustainability became more at the core of our daily operations. We are now a department that is called, we changed the name, Certifications and Responsible Tourism, to a new name, which is Tourism Sustainability. And also our directions have been changing, and including sustainability in the name of our departments put it at the core of our daily operations. So it's an important opportunity that we've seen during the last months. And also we share different and similar challenges in this case. We've defined or identified a challenge to build a consistent team with focal points. We need to be in frequent coordination with different institutions and with different units and departments to implement a successful action plan. Another challenge, as always, is the change of mindset. We need to change ourselves so that we can bring this to our daily tasks and make it more impactful. A government transition is always a challenge, which will happen next year, but we are really looking forward to continue all of these actions because we have set the path up to 2030. And the follow-up and the reporting, of course, it's a challenge, but I think it's an opportunity so that we can monitorize advances closely, and results take time, so we must be patient, but at the same time, we encourage our team and everyone to act quickly on this climate emergency and the goals that have been set. As part of the effort on One Planet Network and as chair country of the Committee on Tourism and Sustainability of UN Tourism, I invite you all to turn commitments into actions by becoming signature countries of One Planet initiatives. And also I look forward to learning from all of you and seeing how our collective efforts shape the future of a more sustainable tourism and advancing climate action. So thank you very much for your time, and pura vida.
Thank you, Mariana. Pura vida. It's fantastic to hear you speak with such great level of detail, and also connecting the dots with resilience building. Also fantastic role you're playing as an ambassador and as our chair of the Committee on Tourism Sustainability. If you have questions for Mariana, please do not hesitate to use the chat. We will keep advancing to make the best use of time. Now I would like to invite Dr. Dirk Lesser, the Director of Sustainable Tourism and Resilience Department, to share with us a few words about a review of literature and tools for climate action planning for local authorities. Dirk, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Virginia. And by the way, we are launching this publication today on the occasion of this very special day supporting tourism resilience. Very quick, I don't want to use too much of the time. I think we are very advanced already in the hour. Just a few thoughts on why this publication was created and what it can serve, what it can help in your climate action planning efforts. So the first thing is that we reconsider climate action and recognize the importance of the planning process and the measurement process in this climate action, which in the past was not a normal and logical thing to see. Very often because it was considered to be very complex, and that is why action was predominantly taking place and very often without planning. We have seen that changing. Last year's annual report of the Glasgow Declaration stressed already how much and how catalytic the Glasgow Declaration network was in supporting the joint planning efforts. This publication is designed to support you even further. Together with measurement, these are the two pillars to drive in climate action into the right direction, and to be informed about the progress you are making in the desired direction. Many of the identified elements in this publication can be used for climate action in destinations, linking it to existing plans, whether they are existing plans for climate action or on sustainability or on resilience in destinations. We draw the lessons mainly coming from literature developed around mitigation, adaptation, but it is especially also true for mitigation. Many of these elements which we have identified are useful for that context as well. So while climate action plans, and that's what we learned this morning, especially in the first session already, are very often considered to be important, it is also very relevant to stress that climate action plans as standalone plans are not ideal. They can exist, they are useful when they exist, they are definitely better than carrying out climate action without a plan, but ideally they are linked to other existing plans already, whether they are focusing only on tourism development, including the different stakeholders, or whether they are focusing on destination, regional, or city development as destination strategies, or focused on sustainability. This linking has many benefits, as it is avoiding that we are overlooking interconnectivities between these different planning objectives and prioritization issues, which are otherwise conflicting. Advancing through well-planned and reflected approaches allows us for a review and constant improvement, allows us for the stakeholders to align on these objectives which are formulated in the plan, allows us for transparency, and ultimately triggers trust. Destinations will achieve these trigger processes which are ongoing and ultimately lead to resilient development in and beyond tourism. We hope you find that publication useful. Let us know if you have feedback on that. With that, back to you, Virginia. Happy Resilience Day.
Thank you so much, Dirk, for sharing the report, for releasing the report, actually, as you said, and the useful reflections. Now it's time to start the panel. As you may have noticed, we're running a little bit behind time. So even before we start, I would like to already anticipate that we will be running over 15 minutes. If you can stay, that would be fantastic, especially the speakers. We certainly need you. So hoping that it will be okay for everyone, and thank you for your understanding. I'm really happy to be joined by Jeremy Smith as a co-moderator for this panel. He's an independent climate expert, and also by a fantastic lineup of speakers, including Verónica Enríquez Morera, Manager of Strategy and Knowledge, and Cristina Vallet, EU Project Manager, both at the Directorate General for Tourism of the Catalan government. We also have Finn Johnson, Destination Stewardship Manager from Oregon Coast Visitors Association. We have Roberto Clavin, founder and owner from Cayman, Pantanal in Brazil. And we have Jamie Sweeting, Vice President, Social Enterprise and Responsible Travel of G Adventures, and also Planeterra. And Mr. Paul Cripps, Managing Director, Amazonas Explorer. So let's get started. Jeremy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Virginia, and thank you to everyone for joining us here today. I'm going to start with a question to Cristina and Veronica from the Catalan Tourism Board. You designed a climate action plan aligned with the pathways of the Glasgow Declaration and put inside of it your strategic goal. One of the strategic goals is resilience to climate change. Could you share with us some information on how you have been developing this plan, and in particular, how you are supporting the sector in Barcelona to become more climate resilient?
Sorry, just before you start, could we get Jeremy pinned on the screen, please? Thank you, colleagues. Sorry, I interrupted, but I think the floor is yours, Veronica.
The floor is yours, Veronica and Cristina.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, and sorry for the delay. Yes, Jeremy. Yeah. The General Directorate of Tourism and the Catalan Tourism Board work together on the coordination of the Climate Action Plan. This has proven to be a good way of governance. We are also in touch with other departments from the Catalan government, such as the Catalan Office of Climate Change. This structure allows us to be in line with the work of our region. This comes from the work done to create the Climate Action Plan, because back in 2022, when we started working on the Climate Action Plan, we were sure about one thing: we did not want to reinvent the wheel. As such, we asked other departments of the Catalan government what they were doing to be able to do actions that went in line with the efforts that were being done. As part of our structure, we work with a technical assistant that does an audit every year to see how we are doing. This keeps us in track, since we know that by the end of the year, we will be made accountable. We also work with other external organizations. For instance, now we are calculating the carbon footprint of Catalonia as a destination, and we have external support also.
Jeremy, could you hear us?
We heard you fine. I was waiting for the next question. I didn't hear anything to me.
Thank you, Veronica, very much for outlining the synergy with other Catalan institutions. Certainly not starting from scratch or reinventing the wheel is very useful in this challenging task that we have ahead of us. So thanks a lot for a clear approach. I'll move now on to Oregon Coast Visitors Association, if you allow. And you have a plan, Finn, that sorry, Cristina, you wanted to say something?
Oh yeah, no, sorry about this. I thought that there were like Well, I wanted to say something, but I wasn't sure you were gonna ask a question about like the measurement and so on. But like we can definitely move on, move forward. Huh? Just that's it. Yeah.
We will do 2 rounds. I mean, I'm a super
Cool.
optimistic person, as you know, so we will do 2 rounds in 20 minutes. It's fine.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll come back to you. Don't worry.
No worries.
Let's talk about the Oregon plan for a second, because the plan of Oregon, I mean, it highlights how the impacts of climate will affect lodging, how they will affect food services, outdoor recreation, basically, you know, the backbone of the tourism economy. And last year, when we were doing the reporting, you actually submitted quite a thorough, you know, update. And I was wondering if you could share with us a bit on the achievements and challenges that you saw after now year 2 on implementation. No, can you share with us, especially if you can connect to resilience building? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'll try to keep it quick. I'm looking forward to hearing from Christina. Every time I've heard anything from her, it's been interesting. So I'll be brief. But yeah, we've been implementing our climate action plan, our mitigation, adaptation, and resiliency plan for about 2 years now. In the European context, that is probably par for the course, but for the United States and Oregon, that is definitely ahead of the curve a little bit. We were the first climate action plan in the United States, and really have been trying to pivot some of our partners in Oregon as well in that direction. But I think the question really is about some of the achievements and some of the challenges, and then I'd love to give a quick update on where the plan is going in the future. We had a lot of challenges rolling out the plan. We were in a very rural place. I think everyone, or maybe everyone, is keeping up with the news in the United States, and there's a deep political divide between things like words, particularly like climate change, and I think in rural places in the United States, it's really difficult to engage with folks on really high level ideas. The UN SDGs are not really the conversation on the Oregon coast in Oregon, for better or worse, probably worse. But a lot of what we had to do initially, challenge-wise, was recalibrate our language. So actually sort of come out of the context that a lot of this was coming from, which was the Glasgow Declaration, and then totally reformat and change all the conversation to say, okay, this actually isn't about, UN climate change goals. This is about, protecting the resiliency in a very local level. So what we really did communication-wise is change our conversation from what I would say like values-based sort of understandings of climate change, like protecting the world for future generations. Those things are things that I would say are very, very valuable, and elements of climate action that are really important to myself. But those were isolating our community members, and it was making it a political discussion. So we really reframed a lot of our discussions into win-win sort of conversations about tourism management. And I think a good example of that is transportation. A lot of our work has been taking advantage of funding that came through the Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act for transportation decarbonization, car-free transportation, et cetera. And we reframed a lot of that conversation from greenhouse gas emissions to lowering congestion and reducing parking pressures. So, ultimately the same impact, which is reduced transportation emissions, but our partners were much more interested and called to action by that idea of, getting cars off the road in their local communities. I think just kind of connecting that to the achievement side of that, positioning for thinking about climate action on the Oregon coast, because we put together a plan and we're in place. Really kind of when those big funding bills were rolling out, we essentially were able to leverage a lot of money through grant funding to bring to the coast, which is a really rural place without a lot of capacity typically for thinking about big things like, resiliency in 10 to 15 years. So that was really exciting. We had a plan, and we were able to use that to connect with partners, changing our communication, like I mentioned a bit, and then really bring that money to the Oregon coast, because we were positioned to talk about things like, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera, in grant applications. And then the last thing I'll say is we have updated our plan. So we had a 2-year timeline update. So 2022 was the first climate action plan that we ever had. And like I said, one of the first in the United States. And now we have gone through a pretty comprehensive overhaul of that plan. And really what most of that revision has done is localized all the conversations. So instead of talking about, sort of big platitudes around greenhouse gas emissions, percentages of, global emission, et cetera, we've really focused in on like the county, the very regional level of government, and said, here's what rainfall increases look like for these areas. Here is how that connects to tourism. Here's how it's going to impact, travel during, heavy rainfalls. Here's how it's going to impact hotels during summer drought events. And so really localizing a lot of that data has been really, I think, an important part of updating our communication. Elephant in the room is the conversation is changing, so we're staying tuned with that. But I think communication is a big part of how we're going to kind of stay dynamic in that changing conversation in the United States.
Thank you, Finn. That's really interesting. And I think the challenges of adapting one's language to the context and the situation is something we're all going to face. What I think it makes me connect, I'm going to ask a question to Paul Kritz from Amazonas Explorer. Is Paul, we can change the language to adapt to it, but we can't change the challenges that we face. And the work you've been doing is looking at climate risk assessment and adapting your tours very much to the specifics of not the abstraction of extreme weather, but the extreme weather conditions that you face where you operate as Amazonas Explorer. Could you give us some examples on the ongoing work you're doing in citing your work inside of understanding the climate risks?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Paul from Amazonas Explorer, and we're based in Cusco, southern Peru, high in the Andes. So we are literally at the forefront of climate change, and we can see it happening before our very eyes. Over the past 30 plus years of operating adventure trips throughout the Andes and the Amazon, I've seen glaciers melting and even completely disappearing, river levels dropping, chronic deforestation of both the Andes and the Amazon, and an increasing susceptibility to extreme weather events, such as extreme heat, cold conditions, extreme rain, sleet, snow, thunder, and lightning, to name a few. So these end up resulting in flooding, landslides, road and train closures, trekking routes becoming unbearably hot at certain times of year or too unpleasant to attempt due to forest fires nearby, planes not arriving or departing on time, and rivers and lakes becoming too shallow to safely raft or paddle on. So some of the examples of how we are building climate change into our risk assessments. Nowadays, here in the Andes, it's much harder to predict the start and the end of the rainy season. And so what dates will certain rivers be safe to raft or should be left alone? So we need to build in allowances for this. On trekking routes in the dry season, do we need to look at earlier starts in the morning to avoid trekking in the midday sun? We need to identify or provide shady areas to rest in and make sure we have enough drinking water at regular intervals. Which roads, cycle tracks, trekking routes, campsites are more susceptible to landslides or flooding, and which are likely to be least affected by extreme weather events and thus safer to use. Do we need to build in more leeway into our trips to allow for any delays due to late arrival of clients or the inability of trains, buses and planes to operate on any day? So that's just some of the ideas that we're thinking through. And whilst being an adventure operator has always involved some or many of these risks, and we are prepared for them, we are now definitely adding climate change / more extreme weather events to our standard risk assessments so that we are more prepared accordingly.
Thank you so much, Paul. Very interesting to see how you're adapting your tours to extreme weather. Next question is for Roberto from Pantanal, Cayman Pantanal. I mean, Pantanal is also very prone to wildfires and drought. What is the role that your business, Cayman, is playing, Roberto, in adaptation in the region?
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, everybody. Well, basically, Cayman is a very large ranch in the Pantanal. It has almost 53,000 hectares of land. I have been working on this ranch for the last 40 years. It used to belong to my family, a much larger ranch from which Cayman came after we divided it amongst ourselves. And since the beginning, I thought that the Pantanal was much more than just a place for cattle raising. I was able to identify the beauty and the biodiversity of the place. And so when finally this ranch was divided amongst the family, I put my project in place. And basically, it's a project based in memory, collaboration, which memory because my memory from my youth in the Pantanal, and collaboration because I created a project based on 3 pillars. One is conservation, rewilding projects. The other one is tourism through for wildlife observation, and the other one is to continue to have cattle raising in the same area. So these 3 pillars, they work together in collaboration, and we have changed the local culture towards the understanding of how important biodiversity is for the continuation of these businesses. And basically, I brought climate change as an issue to my project in 2019. We have had since then 3 huge fires in the region. The last one was this last year. It consumed probably 80% of my property. It is something amazing what goes on when we have one of those fires. It can go to like consuming 300,000 hectares of land in the Pantanal. It's like that. So basically what we're seeing is that the Pantanal is changing. The Pantanal is probably one of the largest inland wetlands of the world. It is considered a tropical climate, but scientists are already discussing the change of the situation. It's going to become a semi-arid area in 40 years, more or less. So we have to adapt. So we have to plan. And what have I been doing? I have been doing, first of all, I consider myself, instead of a cattle rancher or some other kind of ranchers, I am a biodiversity rancher. I depend on biodiversity. So my business, my collaboration, everybody that is there depends on that for their jobs and for what I want to show. It's kind of a laboratory. And so what we have been doing, we have trying to increase the resilience of the property through being very specific, opening roads that go around the property, inside the property, and in each of these roads that will take the guests to see the property, to see wildlife, we're building water ponds, digging wells, connecting these wells and these ponds to areas that we consider like wildlife refuges. We're building areas that look like, you know, a fort of dirt. You know, you build like a protection of dirt, and inside this half moon of dirt, which is high, it's elevated, you have fresh water inside for the animals, wild animals. You have fresh water outside. The area is fenced for cattle. So basically, and then we have in these areas, we have also reservoirs for fighting fires. So I have been trying to develop these areas at Caimán. So we now have like 7. I have, of course, during these 40 years, I dug wells all over the place. So I'm trying to adapt it to these situations. But the most important tool that we have nowadays is that the government finally understood that the Pantanal has to be managed by fire after the rains. This was something that was done by the locals many, many years ago. But unfortunately, some ecologists and government understood that fires would be very harmful to the place. They did not understand that fires are part of the biome because we are kind of a savanna-like vegetation. And so now they are finally authorizing that you put fires just after the rains. And so this prevents huge wildfires during the dry season. So there's a lot of collaboration with neighbors. And I can follow on the next, if there is another question, I can go on.
Thank you, Roberto. I think what's so interesting in both yours and Paul's examples, you're both working very specifically in places, and you have the remarkable local context, which is the reality of resilience. The next question is to Jamie Sweeting from G Adventures. Jamie, whereas these previous 2 speakers work in one place, G Adventures works all across the world, and yet in everywhere you work, your commitment to working at a community level is one of the things that defines what G is. How then do you combine that need for local specificity and being a global tour company. I mean, what are you doing to support climate resilient tourism?
Thanks, Jeremy, and everyone. Great to see Roberto again after nearly 27 years, I think. So great to see you're still at it, mate. I think at G, we needed a global response to the regenerative or regenerate pillar of the Glasgow Declaration, and as such, we wanted to create something that seemed devilishly simple, but in reality, we know the complexity of it, and we launched an initiative called Trees for Days in collaboration with our non-profit partner Planeterra. The initiative focuses on growing, very simple, a tree per person per day that travels with us. And yes, absolutely, I know that some tree planting projects have gotten a bad rap, and for good reason. But we believe that growing the right trees in the right places with the right people can make a life-changing difference. We ensure that by growing trees that directly contribute to uplifting communities and strengthens their resilience to the impacts of climate change, you can make a real difference. In just 18 months since we launched the Trees for Days program, we're now in the process of growing over 4 million trees with 18 different community tree growing partners benefiting some 100 plus communities.
Super interesting, Jamie, also to see the trees more in connection with community resilience than perhaps in an offsetting discussion, right? Which is where we are normally talking about reforestation. And don't get me wrong, it's not a pure criticism, but it's really an interesting angle that they bring resilience to the communities. Okay, I want to go back to the very beginning where I was theoretical and with the definition. And remember that climate resilient development includes both adaptation and also decarbonization. So I wanted to give the floor again to colleagues Veronica and Christina. Can you give us a little bit of a tour of the actions you have implemented? I find very interesting the funding support, for example, for some companies, or the water efficiency work that you're doing, and obviously the measurement piece. So I know we don't have much time, but could you give us a little tour on how you are supporting the Catalan tourism sector? Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, Veronica, I can start, and then if you want to give you some numbers as well, that's possible. But basically, the Catalan Tourism Board and the General Directorate of Tourism, we're working together on the resilient part. We're providing funding for SMEs, water and energy efficiency, and this is as a plan to help the sector. We also have taken into account indicators, and we believe that having data on the tourism sector is super important. And some of the indicators are in the global perspective, right? We want to understand how the ecosystem is and then provide tools as well. So when we want to understand the system, the tourism system in Catalonia, what we have done is understand very well the waste management as well, and other indicators as snow coverage and of course CO2 emissions. And after understanding this, we worked on, as I mentioned, providing tools to the sector. So indicators, I wanted to mention this because indicators are key throughout all the levels of the implementation of our climate action plan, from setting the general perspective to the information that the tools that we provide to the sector. And I don't know if you want to some numbers on what we have provided, but yeah,
why not? Go ahead.
We can look at, we had some numbers around.
Don't worry, otherwise let us continue, and then when you find them, we can look at the numbers for a closing.
Perfect.
Numbers.
Awesome.
Thanks, Christina. dig a little deeper in to some of the specifics that are happening with Finn from Oregon coast. As Virginia said, you followed up your first extensive plan with a highly detailed implementation plan. I mean, over 70 pages on implementation, and going into real depth on some of the specific actions that you've been implementing. I mean, one that really caught my eye was the work you've been doing on the coast with the local tourism's food supply chain, and how that translates as climate action and whatever we choose to call it. Could you explain exactly what it is that you're doing, developing local food chains, food supply chains rather?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think this topic particularly connects to resiliency as well. The conversation was stimulated really by the COVID pandemic. In the 1980s, this is just something I've read, but in the 1980s, every grocery store in the US had about 7 days worth of food inside the store. And now, thanks to just-in-time shipping, there's about 2 days worth of food for the community that a grocery store supports. So for a place like the Oregon coast, which is over a pretty intense mountain range and on the coast, and at hazard of what we call a cascadia, which is a giant earthquake that we're likely to receive in the next 150 years. The COVID sort of supply chain crisis, I would say, really re-identified that sort of food supply chain length as a real vulnerability, in a climate sense. Roads can shut down for all sorts of reasons, wildfires, floods, etc. But also, just in a community sense, like if you have an isolated community at the end of a long road and it can't have access to the food it depends on, what's going to happen. And we, this is an example, I think, of, connecting wins to different categories and really shaping the conversation using a couple different vectors, I guess, of attack in some ways. And what I mean by that is the seafood conversation on the Oregon coast was stimulated by this sort of risk assessment that came out of COVID. But follow-up sort of studies indicated that for tourism, first of all, the Oregon coast has an abundant seafood opportunity. We've got really, really high quality seafood from very well managed and sustainable fisheries. And people come to the Oregon coast and they want to eat seafood. That's our unique proposition culinarily. We ship it all over the world, and that's what we found is 90% of seafood that was landed on the Oregon coast was sent somewhere else. And because of the way we've set up our supply chains, the seafood, the fish and chips restaurants that people were coming to the Oregon coast to eat at were buying Alaskan cod from Cisco. And so there was this crazy thing where we were shipping out 90% of this really high quality catch, and we were, bringing in whatever we needed. And that is, in our opinion, that's huge economic leakage. 55% of our visitor spend is on food. And if that money is just going to those supply chain actors and it's going to those food processors in Alaska or, probably China, to be honest, we'd catch Dungeness crab, one of the biggest markets from the Oregon coast is Dungeness crab, which is a local seafood luxury, and we ship it via air cargo to China for processing and then ship it back to the Oregon coast and other places in the United States for eating. And that's all air freight, so it's incredibly high CO2 emissions. And essentially what we found is, first of all, there's not awareness of this. Nobody had done this sort of research, so whoa, there's this big problem and sort of under the table. And second, you've got this huge amount of economic leakage, 90% of that seafood being shipped out. We found if you held on to 10% of that seafood, just increase that margin that's kept and landed on the coast, you'd have a $90 million economic return for those coastal economies because of that, that idea that a dollar kept in the community is more powerful than a dollar that comes in and then goes out immediately. And we also, part of that study was there's not the capacity, because the way these supply chains have been designed, there's really not the capacity to process this fish, and there's not, consumer awareness. There's not really a market for maybe the not super popular fish species. So, there's all sorts of things that are sort of conspiring. Most of them are just a lack of information to keep this problem underground. And then the last thing that I'll say too on that is as far as, CO2 and climate resilience and mitigation actually a little bit more pointedly goes, seafood, sustainably caught seafood is a really low carbon impact. And so, this is a really high quality protein source that we can land and sell on the coast and, hopefully cut out that air freight cargo to China and back. And it can be a really high quality seafood source for local communities as well that has a really low carbon impact. And so what we've been working on since then is, first of all, articulating that information, what is the landscape? Where is the seafood going? What does that cost us economically? And then the second is increasing availability. So trying to connect existing suppliers with markets. Tourism has an incredible vocal power. We're really good at marketing and we're really good at connecting our markets with whatever the experience might be. So we've been really leaning into that to try to, share existing seafood options, like really blasting out this is a local spot that's selling local seafood. Come check it out. And then the last thing, the big thing, I think that the really challenging piece of the puzzle is, sorry, we've got a little bit of feedback, but the last piece of the puzzle is increasing that availability. At some point you hit that wall, which is the supply chain cannot process fish on the coast, because there's limited capacity to do that. So, that last bit it's huge, and we are leaning in. We've got millions of dollars that are lining up from state legislature to start addressing that conversation, but it's really the first two bits were essential for that conversation.
Thank you, Finn, for opening our eyes to such a big issue. From seafood to cattle, Roberto, I'm looking at you now. You already started alluding to, how you're trying to balance the conservation, tourism, and also cattle farming. Could you maybe share a bit more details about how you are doing this in Cayman?
Okay, basically, when I started this new concept of developing the Pantanal, I told the people there that were working for the ranch that I was going to have two more activities inside the ranch. One would be the new lodge, which was inspired in Africa. I went to Africa for some months and I saw and I learned and I copied. And then also I was going to invite scientists, and these scientists would be established there. I would offer them a place to develop and install a base and study the animals that were endangered. That's why I talk about collaboration. And so people understood that their jobs now depended on nature. So if nature was abundant, jobs would be great and they would attract more people to visit. Jobs were available for especially women, because until then it was only for men in a cattle ranch. So it changed completely the mentality, and it changed the way people understand the Pantanal. I always try to think that, if you want to come into an area that is so fragile like the Pantanal, you have to try to adapt your businesses to the Pantanal and not the Pantanal to your businesses. And so basically this is what we have been trying to do there for many years. But I would go forward and say that, okay, I have this project in Cayman, I'm trying to develop it 40 years, I'm successful in some ways, in other ways not so much. But what about my neighbors? What about what's going on? And how do I influence them to join this initiative? So we have had lots of conversations with neighbors, and we have finally reached this conclusion that we should come together as like-minded people and try to have this philosophy of adapting our businesses to the Pantanal. We can continue to have cattle or tourism or scientists, whatever, but we should try to adapt our businesses to the Pantanal differently from what's going on there. Because what we have been seeing lately is that a lot of people come to the Pantanal and they just disregard the fragility of the place. They destroy everything in order to have more productivity for cattle. And this is very, very bad for the Pantanal. So these neighbors started to understand that, first of all, we should develop the idea of biological corridors, linking one property to the other. And this was done. And we have now almost 350,000 hectares of land, private land, that is connected by all these corridors that were created by this initiative. I think, this is a private venture. This has nothing to do with government. which makes me very proud about what we have been achieving there. And so this is one way of looking and showing that we can develop examples in the Pantanal, and that these examples will be emulated by other places inside the Pantanal. So this is what we're trying to do in order to reduce the impact of just cattle, in order to make these people understand the importance of biodiversity, in order to make these people understand how we must be prepared and adapt our operations for climate change and for this the drier Pantanal that we see in the future.
Thank you, Roberto. Jamie, back to you. I mean, we've listened to the detail on several very specific local initiatives, and I saw that after your first contribution, there was quite a bit of chat responding to what you've been talking about. I wondered if you would like to go into more detail on it, as many others have been doing so with theirs, or whether you have another example of climate resilience at a destination level that you've been doing.
Yeah, I think maybe going into a little example of one of those partners that we work with gives it a bit more flavor. So in Morocco, we're working with the High Atlas Foundation in a region heavily impacted by desertification, shifting seasons, and severe water shortages. 6 years of drought have taken a real toll on local livelihoods and food security, which were compounded by the devastating earthquake that we many of us will remember from 2023. Through this partnership, we're supporting local farmers in growing climate-appropriate trees, such as native olive trees, pomegranates, and figs, which provide both environmental benefits but also additional income streams. But it's not, you know, to us, it's about more than just trees, right? A tree is a tree, but it's, you know, really what can the tree lead to? What can it do in terms of helping with resiliency and adaptation? And in this particular initiative, it's also about uplifting women by developing community tourism in the very villages where these trees are being grown. We're bringing travelers to experience this region firsthand. We visit women-led tourism enterprises, and our travelers immerse themselves in local culture and natural heritage, all while witnessing how growing trees can transform livelihoods and respond to the climate biodiversity crisis.
Thank you, Jamie. Very interesting. I'm turning to Paul now. You also have tree planting initiatives, as far as I understand it, in Peru, where you operate. What resilience benefits or resilience-related benefits are they bringing to the communities?
So we started back in 2007 as a very localized tree planting project, which was helping reforest the very few remaining small pockets of native Cunha forests in the Lares Valley, which is up above the Sacred Valley of the Incas near Cusco. And this was in an attempt to protect certain endemic species which were disappearing at a very fast rate. But as the glaciers are melting and the rainy seasons became more unpredictable, the local communities came to us and EcoAm Peru, the NGO we work with, to ask how they could help preserve their precious water supplies. So that's what we're now emphasizing on. The tree planting project has actually snowballed now into a trans-Andean project that stretches from Colombia to Argentina, literally planting millions of trees each year. The emphasis now is on planting as many trees as possible to protect these vital water sources. And by planting literally millions of native species high in the Andes near the bases of the receding glaciers, the idea is that these forests will retain the water from the glaciers and from the rains as and when they come, and then slowly release them throughout the year, thus providing the communities with a constant year-round supply of fresh, clean water, and therefore resilience to counteract climate change. As a bonus, they will also help prevent erosion and landslides that are a constant problem due to these extreme weather conditions. So we're proud to be a small part of that, and we plant 2 trees per person per day there in Peru with us, and we're actively looking at ways to triple, quadruple, or even quintuple that number in the future. I think you also asked, I mean, is this part of our offsetting program?
Thank you.
It's very
That's
difficult
interesting
to
to know. Let
calculate.
us know.
Is that, do you want me to keep going or?
Yeah, keep going. It's an interesting reflection. Please do.
It's very difficult to calculate exactly what quantity of carbon these future forests are going to capture. So we don't feel it's correct to try and make the tree planting initiative our carbon offsetting program. So whilst the planted tree survival rate is around 95%, how long will they grow for? Will they get chopped down in the future or eaten or caught in a forest fire? So calculating that carbon that they'll absorb over their lifetime is virtually impossible. But we do know that they definitely absorb carbon, and I understand methane and sulfur dioxide, which are two very extremely contaminating global warming gases. So that's a bonus. So on top of the tree planting, we offset our carbon into a carbon sink in Manu National Park in the Peruvian Amazon. We work with the local community there to preserve the remaining rainforest they've got and also help them reforest parts that have been previously deforested. So I think this is a more transparent and more calculable carbon offset scheme than our tree planting project, but by doing both, as well as ways of looking to reduce our operational carbon footprint, I think we're genuinely doing our best to make Amazonas Explorers as sustainable a tourist operator as possible.
Thank you, Paul. That's really fascinating context on the realities of the challenges of planting and reforestation. And listening to everyone talk, I mean, what I think we hear is when people talk about tourism resilience, they talk about the specifics of this place where they operate and the context that they operate in. And that is what connects you all, individual stories connected by the fact they are place-based. And it makes sense because the risks that we are confronting happen in place. Resilience is built in the places where tourism operates. This is not an abstract or technical procedure. This is the reality of operating in destinations and with communities. But what it means is that we're here on Global Tourism Resilience Day, but that for tourism to achieve resilience is impossible without supporting the resilience of the places where tourism operates. Therefore, delivering resilient tourism nurtures resilient communities, nurtures resilient destinations and ecosystems. And, at its best, this interconnectedness reflects the unique nature of our sector. And I'd like to hope provides a strong argument justifying the continuance of good, sustainable, regenerative, resilient tourism. Hearing from all of you coming from your different sectors and your different contexts shows that it requires all actors operating at all different scales. But it doesn't mean that we all do the same thing. Each one of your stories is extremely different. And that again makes sense. Resilience is diversity, different parts of the system playing their role. The rainforest that we'll be celebrating COP30 in is a more resilient place than a monoculture, specifically because of its richness of diversity. So I just want to move on quickly to look at what it might mean for the specific parts that we focus on in tourism. The poll that Virginia put in at the beginning asked what specific focus points should the sector address or prioritize, and different people spread across them all. There was a wide range of answers. And I'd say that in itself reflects the all-encompassing and interconnected challenge of addressing resilience, that it requires different actors doing different things depending on their context, their strengths, and their needs. Each one of these organizations has different priorities, but all come together. We need those actors who can afford the risk assessments to not only invest in them, but to share them, the destinations, the large companies, because we all share the risks. And we know from the work we've done on Scope 3 that we're all part of each other's supply chain. If a large company wants to be resilient, it becomes resilient through supporting the small suppliers and other parts of its network to be resilient too. But then those small suppliers with their close local connections maybe have the knowledge and the understanding of context that they can bring to a wider global audience. All this is woven together, meaning there is a need for guidance, for clarity, for frameworks, but not an abstract framework, but frameworks grounded in the experience of those who are working and experiencing the challenges. It's why we need the international regional frameworks of collaboration to guide and steer. We see the example 3 and a bit years into the Glasgow Declaration, but there are now over 380 published climate action plans, each one unique to the specifics of the destination or the organization who has produced it, aligned through their common threads of the 5 pathways for climate action. And this balance of alignment and specific focus enables us to explore the challenges together, to align progress and catalyze acceleration and implementation. Just to conclude, I would say that UN Tourism last year published a first implementation report assessing progress that the sector has made so far. A second is coming soon. If you look at these reports, what you'll see that the early focus on driving measurement, as Dirk mentioned in his contribution, measurement has been significantly progressed in the last couple of years by those who have signed up and published climate action plans. There's a great deal of work also happening around decarbonization. A lot more needs to be done. But considering where we were, there is much more guidance, tools, methodologies, examples than before. And offsetting, as was mentioned at the last, is increasingly seen as being subsidiary. And now we come to the end, and there is this emerging focus on resilience. For many, it is new ground, but not totally. The choices in the poll weren't random. They were selected from actions reported by signatories in their climate action plans. Those actions that they reported helped guide the writing of the progress report. They reflect guidance that it will be sharing. And that is the heart of the experience, that the path is charted together through forums like this, through the examples of individuals like yourselves, and through acknowledging the challenges we all face and sharing them together. And then just to loop back as a last line to where I began, that because we don't just come here together today to share stories, that coming here together is in itself the developing of resilience. So thank you for everyone for being part of that. And I hand back to Virginia for the final part.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I mean, your conclusion is perfect and extremely useful. I think we're going to wrap it up. I would like to thank all the panelists. I would like to thank all the participants. Your insights really help us advance towards the development of that guidance that Jeremy was alluding to. I'm not promising new books, but it definitely helps us synthesize what's the collective thinking on critical aspects. We will be sharing some key takeaways after having digested all the good content from this morning session and from this present session, and really look forward to continue exchanging with you all. If you allow me, can we do a poll again? It's just the same poll, just in case you have changed your opinion after listening to our fantastic speakers. Pick your 3, again, not cheating not allowed, only 3. And we will then use this to, as I said, create key takeaways and, you know, come up with hopefully some guidance for resilience to be accelerated. If you think about it, in the Glasgow Declaration Initiative, it is the regenerate pathway that speaks of resilience. It's quite a broad pathway because it speaks about conservation, it speaks about adaptation, it speaks about resilience, it speaks about communities. So it's quite complicated to unfold it and implement it. But as Jeremy said, we are seeing more and more actions on that pathway when we do the reporting. So we're on the right track. It's just a lot of work, and we're really happy that we have this network to share ideas and advance collectively. Let's see what we are getting. 49 votes out of 88. I think we're seeing a bit higher scoring for strengthened local supply chains after the discussion. Same for local communities, that's growing as we speak. Funding still a bit low. Complex issue, I think we need a separate webinar for finding funding related aspects. Okay, probably we can end the poll now. It's just for guiding the key takeaways. And really, I have nothing else to say besides thank you so much, and really looking forward to seeing you again soon. Have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.